he saw her from half a mile out. Not because he was watching the road, he rarely watched the road. The road going past his land produced little that required watching, but because he had come up to the fence line to check the north gate latch, and the morning was clear, and the Powder River country in October had a particular quality of light that made distance readable. And what the distance showed him was a woman moving along the road at the pace of someone who was putting ground between herself and something, not travelling toward anything in particular. The difference was visible even from half a mile. He had moved that way himself once. He stayed at the fence line. She was closer now, large-framed and broad-shouldered, moving with a ground-covering stride that was more than walking and less than running, her arms carrying nothing except a bundle wrapped in a horse blanket that she held against her chest, the way you hold something you grabbed on the way out rather than something you packed. Her hair was half down, the way hair goes when you leave without finishing what you started. Her face, when she was close enough that he could read it, was the face of a person in the last hour of a long internal argument. Not defeated, not afraid, but resolved in the way that comes after fear has finished its say and been overruled. She reached the gate. She stopped. She looked at him. She was breathing hard from the pace. He said, "Stay. If you have ever been on a road with nothing in your arms and nowhere decided to go, subscribe to this channel right now and drop the name of your city in the comments below." I want to know how far tonight's story travels, because the woman at that gate in the October of 1883 has not stopped running long enough to understand that the man who just spoke one word to her has looked at what she is carrying and what she is not carrying, and has decided something that he has not yet explained to her. And that one word is about to become the most important thing anyone has said to her in a long time. Stay with me. Her name was Nora Voss, and she had been running for 3 hours and 40 minutes, which she knew because she had looked at the clock on the parlour mantel at 5:15 in the morning when she came downstairs and found her brother Clem already at the kitchen table with the lamp on and the look on his face that told her he had been waiting for her to come down. Clem's face when he was waiting for something had a particular quality she had been reading since childhood, the braced quality of a man who has done something he knows was wrong and has decided the best response is to hold his position until the other person accepts it. He had told her about the agreement. It had been her father's arrangement, made 6 weeks ago without her knowledge, a marriage agreement with a man named Aldous Fetcher, whose family owned the adjacent land to the east, and whose acquisition of the Voss Ranch, combined with his own holdings, would create the largest single cattle operation in Powder River County. Her father was 61 years old, and his health had been declining since the previous winter, and he had made the arrangement the way he made most decisions, alone, in the conviction that he knew best, with a complete and apparently unconscious disregard for the question of what Nora wanted. What her father wanted was for her to be settled. What the Fetcher family wanted was the land. What Aldous Fetcher, who was 38 and had been married before, and had made 2 remarks about her size at their one formal supper that her father had either not heard or declined to address. What Aldous Fetcher wanted was a capable woman who could manage the combined household of a large ranch operation. And Nora fit that description in every respect except the one that mattered, which was that she had not been asked. Clem had told her all of this at the kitchen table and then told her that the agreement was already signed. Her father had signed it, which he had the legal authority to do as head of the household, which was a legal fact she had known her entire life and had never before had reason to feel the full weight of. He told her the wedding date was the 3rd Saturday in November. He told her Aldous Fetcher was a decent enough man. He told her she was 27 years old and the ranch was going to pass to him and their younger brother after their father died, and that her situation needed to be secured, and this was the way their father had decided to secure it. He had used the word secured. She had sat at the table for a moment. She had looked at the lamp. Then she had stood up and gone upstairs and looked at the room she had slept in for 27 years. The quilt her mother had made, the books on the shelf, the window that looked east toward the Powder River, and she had taken the horse blanket from the chest at the foot of the bed and wrapped into it the things that were most hers. The books, her mother's small silver brooch, the account ledger she had been keeping for the ranch for 6 years, her winter shawl. She had come back downstairs. Clem was still at the table. She had said, "I'll be back when you're ready to talk to me like a person instead of a problem that needs solving." She had walked out the door. She had been walking for 3 hours and 40 minutes when she reached the north gate of the property that belonged, as she knew from the county land records she had studied for 6 years, to a man named Caleb Holt. She had not thought about Caleb Holt specifically. She had simply been walking in the direction that was away, and the away had brought her here, and here was a gate and a man standing at it, who had looked at her coming from half a mile out and had said one word. She stood at the gate and looked at him. He was a large man. She registered this the way she registered everything, by comparison to what she knew, and what she knew was horses and cattle and her brothers, none of whom came to her shoulder, and this man was her height or close to it, which was not a common experience. Dark-haired, lean, somewhere in his late 30s, with the weathered steadiness of a man who lived outdoors in all seasons and had stopped noticing it. He was looking at her with the calm, direct attention of someone who was assessing a situation without judgment. "Stay," he had said. "I don't know you," she said. "No," he said. "Caleb Holt. This is my land." He opened the gate. "Come in off the road." She looked at the gate. She looked at the road behind her, empty, the Voss Ranch 3.5 miles back, not visible from here. She looked at the bundle in her arms. "I'm not in any danger," she said. "I'm not being chased." "I know it," he said. "You're cold, and you've been moving hard for a while, and the road in this county doesn't turn into town for another 9 miles. He held the gate. "Come in. There's coffee." She came in. The cabin was set back from the road a 1/4 mile, up a rise that put the river behind it and the mountains in front of it, and gave the whole property a quality of being deliberately positioned, of having been placed by someone who thought about the relationship between a house and its landscape. The cabin itself was solid and plainly made, not rough, but without decoration, the way some men built, with all the attention going to structure and none to ornament. It was clean. The yard was clean. The wood pile was enormous, stacked with the methodical precision of someone who had spent years thinking about winter. He made coffee. She sat at the table and unwrapped the horse blanket and set the bundle down and looked at what she had taken. The account ledger, the books, the brooch, the shawl. 6 years of ranch accounts in her own handwriting. That was what she had carried out of a life. He set the coffee in front of her. He sat across the table. He did not ask what had happened. He did not ask where she was going. He looked at the ledger on the table with the brief, recognizing look of a man who knew what a ranch account ledger was and what it meant that it was the first thing she had packed. "Voss Ranch," he said. "East of here." "You know it," she said. "Your father is Martin Voss." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. "I had a land dispute with him 4 years ago," he said. "Survey irregularity on the east boundary. He argued it in good faith, and so did I, and the judge found for me, and we shook hands, and that was that." He turned his coffee cup. "He is not a bad man." "No," she said. "He is not a bad man." "But he's done something." She looked at the ledger. Then she told him. All of it, the arrangement, the agreement already signed, Aldous Fetcher and the 2 remarks at supper that her father had not addressed. Clem at the kitchen table with the braced look, the word secured. She told it the way she had been trained by 6 years of account keeping to tell things. In order, with the relevant facts, without editorializing. When she finished, he sat with it for a moment. "You said you'd go back when they were ready to talk to you like a person," he said. "Yes, do you think they will be?" She looked at him. He had been listening with the specific quality of someone who heard what was said and also what was underneath it, and the question he had just asked was the question she had been not asking herself for 3.5 miles. "I don't know," she said. "But you're not done with them," he said. "You didn't leave. You walked out until you could breathe." She looked at her hands on the table. "Yes," she said. "That's right." He nodded once, the nod of a man filing information. "Then stay here until you can think straight," he said. "The position I've been managing alone since September was supposed to be 2 people's work. I have no housekeeper, and the accounts are 3 months behind, and I have not eaten a proper meal since the first frost." He looked at the ledger again. "You keep the books. 6 years," she said. "Then you know what you're doing." He stood up. "Room at the back. It's not much. $30 a month, and I'll send for your things if you tell me what you need." She looked up at him. "You don't know me," she said for the second time. "You keep a ranch account ledger, and you walked 3.5 miles in the October cold rather than agree to something without your consent," he said. "That tells me what I need to know to start." She was quiet for a moment. "I'll need paper and ink," she said, "if the accounts are 3 months behind." "Third shelf," he said, and went out to the range. She opened the ledger. The days arranged themselves with a naturalness that surprised her, given that everything that had produced them was unnatural: the pre-dawn kitchen table and Clem's braced face and 3.5 miles of October road. She cooked, which she knew how to do, and which the house needed badly. And she organized the stores and made a proper inventory. And every afternoon she worked on his accounts, which were not badly kept, but were behind in the way of a man who had been managing too many things alone and had let the paperwork accumulate, because paperwork did not require immediate attention the way cattle and fences did. She worked backward from the current date and forward from the last entry, and reconstructed 3 months of transactions from receipts and his brief written notes with the focused, methodical pleasure of a woman who found order in numbers restful. He left her alone to work. This was, she came to understand, not in curiosity, but respect. The specific respect of a man who recognized competence and did not require it to perform for his observation. When she set the completed month's accounts in front of him on a Thursday evening, he read them through with the attention they deserved, and then looked up and said, "You found the September timber discrepancy. You were shorted $4.60, she said. "I can write to the contractor if you want it addressed." "Write to him," he said, and went back to the harness he was mending. She found herself, in those first days, watching him in the particular way she had learned to watch animals and weather, not with attention that announced itself, but with the steady, peripheral awareness of someone building an understanding. He moved through the property with an ease that was not carelessness. Every motion was considered, nothing wasted, and he had the specific relationship with the land that she recognized from her best memories of her father in his younger years, when the ranch had been something he tended rather than something he managed for an exit. He spoke to the horses, not in the way of a man who was performing gentleness, but in the low, automatic murmur of someone for whom the horses were simply part of the conversation of the place. She found this, without deciding to, reassuring, on the 9th day she found the document case. She was reorganizing the shelf where she kept the accounts. Her work had expanded the papers considerably from their previous state, and the document case was behind the old ledgers. A leather case with a brass clasp that had been good quality once and was now simply durable. She did not open it, but she looked at it long enough to see that it had a name written in ink on the inside of the clasp, and the name was not Caleb Holt, but a woman's name, Clara, in the handwriting of someone who had written it there as identification, not label. She put the shelf back in order and went to start the noon meal. That evening she asked him if he had people in the county. He looked up from the fire. "Not now," he said. She waited. "There was a woman," he said, not reluctantly, in the straightforward way he said most things, with the economy of someone who had already decided what to tell. 4 years ago. We had an understanding. She was from the Sheridan country, good family, sensible woman. He paused. The land dispute with your father, when it went to court, someone told her family I was a man who made trouble over surveys. Her family decided I was unstable. She decided with them. He turned the coffee cup. I did not blame her. A family's opinion carries weight. You were right about the survey, Nora said. Yes, he said. The judge found so. He looked at the fire. Being right doesn't always arrive in time to be useful. She looked at her hands. No, she said. It doesn't. He glanced at her and away, and in the brief passage of that glance she understood that he had heard the fuller meaning of what she had said, that she was not only talking about surveys, and that he was not going to press it, which was the right thing. They sat by the fire for another hour without speaking, and it was not an empty silence. It was the silence of two people who had each said something true, and were letting the truth sit. The trouble arrived on the 14th day in the form of Clem. She had expected her father, or both of them together, and it said something about where the family stood that it was Clem alone who came, on a Sunday morning, with his hat in his hands, and the braced look replaced by something that was closer to what he actually was when he was not managing a situation. Caleb let him in. Then Caleb went to the far end of the kitchen and stayed there, which was the position she had come to understand meant he was present and paying attention and would speak if called on and not otherwise. Clem looked at the kitchen, the clean stove, the organised shelves, the papers on the table where she had been working. He looked at Nora. He had the expression of a man who had rehearsed something and was discovering that the room he had rehearsed it for was different from the room he was actually in. Papa wants you home, he said. I know it, she said. Is the agreement still in place? A pause. He won't break it, Nora, the land deal, Clem. She kept her voice level. The agreement was made without my knowledge for a transaction that benefits the family and requires my consent. I am not refusing my consent because I don't understand the circumstances. I understand them completely. I am refusing it because I was not asked, and because Aldous Fetcher said what he said at that supper, and Papa said nothing, and I am not going to marry a man my father cannot be bothered to defend me to. She looked at her brother steadily. If Papa wants to talk to me about what he needs for the ranch, I will listen. I have been the one managing the accounts and the stores and half the decisions on that property for 6 years, and I am prepared to help him find a real solution. What I am not prepared to do is be handed to a man as part of a land transaction and told it is for my own good. Clem was quiet for a long moment. He's not well, Nora, he said, quietly, the braced quality completely gone now, just her brother, younger than her and aware of it. He's scared for what happens after. He was trying to make sure you were secured, she said. He looked at the floor. I know he was, she said. I know he's frightened. I know this came from something that isn't malice. She looked at her brother with the full, undefended look she had been keeping in reserve since the kitchen table 2 weeks ago. But frightened people make bad decisions, and I won't pay for this one with the rest of my life. Tell him that. Tell him I love him and I want to help him find what he needs, and I am not going to do it as Aldous Fetcher's wife." Clem nodded. He looked at Caleb, briefly, and then back at her. "Who is he to you?" he said. It was a fair question. She thought about how to answer it fairly. "He offered me a room and work and time to think," she said. "That is what I needed, and that is what he gave me. The rest is not your business yet." Clem put his hat on. He left without saying anything more, which was, she thought, the most mature thing she had seen from him in years. The kitchen was quiet. She turned to look at Caleb. He was leaning against the far wall with his arms folded, looking at her with the direct, steady attention she had come to recognize as his version of full engagement, not cold, not distant, but so completely present that it had the quality of something solid. "The rest is not your business yet," he said. She looked at him. "Yet," he said. She looked at the table. She thought about the document case with the woman's name on the clasp, and the land dispute her father had argued in good faith and lost, and the way Caleb had stood at the gate in the October light and said stay to a woman moving toward him on a road, without knowing her name or her situation or anything except the pace she was moving at and what it meant. She thought about 14 days of the kind of quiet she had not known she was looking for until she found it, and a man who left her alone to work and read her accounts with genuine attention and went back to his harness without making anything of the $4.60 she had found for him. "The rest," she said, "is not decided yet." "I want to be honest with you about that. I know it," he said. "You're still in the middle of something." "Yes, then finish it," he said. "I'll be here." Her father came on a Wednesday. She had not expected him to come himself. His health made the ride difficult, and his pride made asking for anything difficult, and coming to her was both. He arrived at mid-morning, alone, on the old grey mare he had ridden since before she was born, and he descended from the saddle with the careful, deliberate movement of a man who was managing pain and not advertising it. Caleb came out of the barn and took the mare without being asked, and her father looked at him and then at Nora on the porch and came up the steps. He was smaller than she remembered. Or she was looking at him differently. She brought him inside. She made him sit down. She made him coffee and put food in front of him, because he looked like a man who had ridden 6 miles on pride alone, and the pride was running out. He ate. He did not speak for a few minutes. Caleb came in quietly from the barn and went to the far end of the kitchen and stayed there with his presence as an offered fact, neither announcing itself nor withdrawing. Her father looked at Caleb once and then at Nora and said, "Is this, are you—" "I'm working," she said. The accounts were behind. He looked at his hands. They were the hands of a man who had worked his whole life, and the whole life was visible in them. "I should have asked you," he said. She waited. "I was afraid," he said. "Clem will have the ranch, and Ben will have the east pasture, and I didn't know what you would have, and I—" He stopped. He was a man who did not make speeches, and this was as close as he was going to come. "I have never known what to do with you, Nora. That is a shameful thing to say, and it is the truth. You are more capable than any person I have raised, and I have spent 20 years not knowing what to do with that." She looked at her father for a long time. He had not said she was too much. He had said he did not know what to do with what she was. The difference between those two things was a small distance and a very large one at the same time. "I don't need you to know what to do with me," she said. "I need you to ask me what I need." "What do you need?" he said. "A proper stake in the ranch," she said. "Not as a wife's portion, not as a charity settlement. A documented share for 6 years of work that kept the books balanced and the stores stocked and the contracts filed correctly, and a legal record of it that is mine regardless of what happens after. She looked at him steadily. And for you to tell Aldous Fetcher that the arrangement is dissolved. Her father sat with this for a long moment. His hands were still on the table. The land deal, he said. I'll help you find another way to secure the land deal, she said. I know the Fetcher property boundaries and the water rights situation and 3 alternative structures that could work for both parties without a marriage. I have been keeping these accounts for 6 years. Use me correctly. Her father looked at her. In his face was the expression she had been waiting for without knowing it, not remorse, which required an acknowledgement he was not built for, but recognition. The plain, late recognition of a man seeing something that had been in front of him for 20 years and finding it, at this particular moment, unmistakable, all right, he said. He stayed for 2 hours. He and Nora sat at the table, and she laid out the 3 alternative structures for the land arrangement, and he listened and asked questions, and she answered them. And Caleb moved quietly around the kitchen, making himself useful in the way of a man who belongs in a space without requiring it to acknowledge him. And when her father left, he shook Caleb's hand at the door with the deliberate gravity of a man making a statement that he was not putting into words. The yard went quiet after the grey mare disappeared down the road. Nora stood on the porch. The October afternoon light was doing what October light did in the Powder River country, going long and gold across the grass, making everything look like the last of something and the start of something else simultaneously. Caleb stood beside her. You didn't need me for any of that, he said. No, she said. But I needed somewhere to stand while I figured out what I was going to say. She looked at the light on the grass. That is not a small thing. He was quiet for a moment. No, he said. It isn't. She looked at him. He was looking at the mountains, the particular mountain that sat north of the property, and that she had come to understand he looked at when he was thinking, not for answers, just as the habit of a man who thought better with something large and permanent in his line of sight. Caleb, she said. He looked at her. I am not done with my family, she said. I am going to need to go back, at least until my father's situation is settled. I want you to know that honestly. I know it, he said. And I am not certain what I am to you yet, she said. I told Clem the rest was not decided, and that is true. I need you to know that too. Nora, he said. Yes, I said stay, he said. I did not put a limit on it. He looked back at the mountain. Stay as long as it takes. Stay while you work out your family. Stay while you figure out the rest. A pause. The last of the afternoon light on the grass. I have been on this piece of land for 7 years, waiting for something to arrive that made it feel like a place rather than a location. You walked in off the road 2 weeks ago, and it has been a place since. She looked at him for a long moment. That is more than I expected you to say, she said. I have been thinking about it for 2 weeks, he said. I had time to organize it. She looked at the mountain. He looked at the mountain. The light went on doing what it was doing, which was making everything look like the last of something and the start of something else. And she decided she was going to let it be both. I'll write to the Fetcher family tomorrow, she said. The alternative land structure. If it holds, my father won't need the marriage agreement. I'll look at the proposal, he said. The Fetcher East boundary is part of my original survey dispute. I may be able to speak to their water rights question if you need it. She looked at him. You were going to say that earlier, she said. I was waiting to be asked, he said. She laughed. It was not the first time she had laughed in 2 weeks, she had discovered, unexpectedly dry, but it was the kind of laugh that arrived when you recognized yourself in someone else. The surprised kind, the kind that came from the specific relief of being understood. He did not laugh, but the corner of his mouth did what it did. The land arrangement was settled in November, 3 weeks before the original wedding date, through a water rights easement and a shared fence line agreement that Nora wrote in 2 drafts and Caleb reviewed on the second, and that the Fetcher family accepted because it gave them what they actually needed, which was the water, and did not require anything from anyone that had not been freely offered. Her father signed his name to it at the Powder River County Recorder's Office with his 2 sons and his daughter standing in the room, and when the clerk stamped the document, her father put the stamped copy in Nora's hands without comment, which was, from Martin Voss, a complete and sufficient statement. Aldous Fetcher was in the room. He looked at Nora. She looked back at him with the level, direct gaze she had been told her whole life was too much. He looked away first. She had counted on it. She knew her own face. She returned to the Holt Ranch that evening and told Caleb the arrangement was settled, and he said good, and she said she would stay if the position was still open, and he said it was, and she said she expected to renegotiate the wage given the scope of what she had been doing, and he said, name a figure, and she named 1, and he said yes without hesitation, which told her the figure had been fair, and she filed that for future reference. They were married the following spring in a ceremony attended by her father and her brothers and Caleb's nearest neighbour, and the county recorder who had become, in the months of the land arrangement, a man who had strong opinions about the organising capacity of Nora Voss, and said so at the reception in terms that made her father look, for the first time she could recall, quietly proud. What she built at the Holt Ranch in the years that followed was the thing she had always been building. On her family's land, without the credit, a properly run operation, documented and efficient and thoughtfully managed, expanded in the 3rd year to include a small cattle operation of her own 20 head, her own brand, her own books, that she had proposed to Caleb on a Tuesday evening, and that he had looked at the figures for and said yes, and that had grown by the 5th year to 60 head and a reputation in the county for the particular quality of her management, which was that it was both rigorous and flexible, which was the rarest combination available. Martin Voss came to the ranch every spring until the year he died, which was the 8th year of Nora's marriage and the 14th year of his declining health. He came and sat at her kitchen table and ate her bread and looked around the property with the expression of a man who understood, without stating it, what he was looking at. On his last visit, he said, I did not know what to do with you. I know, Papa, she said. I was wrong not to ask. Yes, she said, you were. He put his hand on the table between them. She put her hand on top of it. That was the whole of the accounting, and it was enough, and she closed it there. She had fled with a horse blanket and 6 years of ranch accounts and her mother's brooch, and the knowledge that she was not going to agree to something without her consent. She had run toward nothing in particular and arrived at a gate where a man was standing who had looked at the pace she was moving and said one word. Stay. She had stayed. She had stayed through everything the staying required, the confrontation with her family, the negotiation with Fetcher, the slow and honest work of figuring out what was between her and Caleb and saying it plainly as she went. She had stayed on her own terms, which were the only terms she had ever been prepared to offer. The ranch in spring smelled of new grass, and the river and the bread she had put in the oven at first light, and Caleb was somewhere in the east pasture with the new calves, and the morning was doing what mornings did in the Powder River country, arriving with the specific, uncomplicated generosity of a day that had decided to be good. She had not been asking for rescue when she came down that road. She had been asking, without knowing it, for somewhere to stand. She had found it. She was not leaving.